No sleep. We found my little sister in the forest as a kid. Now I want to return her. I have an incredibly unusual family. My teenage years were littered with strange events that have led to an almost impossible situation. My family did not come together in the traditional way, however traditional we may look on the outside. I have a mum and dad. Me and my older brother are biologically ethers. I also have 2 adopted sisters. My first sister, Violet, was adopted the traditional way, through an agency. My parents chose her, and she became my sister when she was 5 years old. My parents always wanted a big family and wanted to give a home to a child who was in the system. Violet gave us a few issues growing up, nothing too crazy. She had a rough start but adjusted well. My older brother was more of a problem than her. Peter had no reason to be the way he was. It's like he was just born cruel. He loved tormenting me and Violet. He'd do things that were way too violent for his age, like waterboarding us. As his little brother, I was always scared of him. My littlest sister is the piece of our family that makes us truly unique. We found Birdie when she was 6 years old on a family camping trip in the forest. My parents loved the forest and us kids being surrounded by nature. I remember watching the birds and the trees and just feeling happy to not be at school. Violet was better behaved when we were outside. I think she liked how open it was. It also gave us some space from Peter. On a family trip like that, he couldn't get many opportunities to torture us. On this particular trip, the forest was especially lively. We could hear an entire symphony of animal sounds surrounding us. There were strong floral smells in the air and a fresh breeze that felt as if it cleared the polluted city air from your lungs with every breath. Peter was 16 by this point and still hadn't learned to behave like a civilized human being. He was poking small creatures with sticks and trying to knock nests out of trees with rocks when our parents' backs were turned. I tried to tell them about his cruelty so many times, but they didn't want to address it. They'd had him in therapy over and over, and they were exhausted. Nothing worked. Violet was 12 and getting ready to start secondary school. She was such a good kid though. There was never anything to worry about with her. I was 14 and only a few years above her, so could watch out for her at school. This camping trip seemed like the last real time we'd get to be a family before all of us were too old to care. We made s'mores, told spooky stories, and slept the first night. Then the next morning our lives changed forever. Violet walked off into the forest to explore and pick some flowers. She was super into plants at the time and wanted to see what she could find. We heard her scream about 10 minutes after. Mum and Dad ran to her, and after about 20 minutes they came back with a small girl covered in dirt and wrapped in my dad's oversized jacket. This was the first time we met Birdie, my youngest sister. We named her that because for a long time it was all she could say. When Violet had found her, she had 2 birds sat by her, as if they were watching over her, and she just let out the word Birdie. She was naked, shivering and malnourished at the base of a tree not far from our campsite. She had twigs and leaves in her hair and dirt smeared across her face. Her hair was wild and curly in a dirty blonde color with lighter highlights, where she had been exposed to the sun for so long. The doctors said it was like she had never had a home. They couldn't fathom how she was even alive. They presumed she had lived off berries and lake water, but could find no evidence of a family or people. They couldn't explain her speech and ability to say Birdie and her differences in behavior compared to cases of feral children. She walked, listened and understood speech. Aside from needing some food and love, she was entirely normal. A huge appeal was launched to find her family. They cross-checked missing person cases and no one credible ever came forward. It took months of my parents fighting the legal system before she was allowed to come and live with us officially. By the time she got to us, she could form proper sentences like a normal child, and the doctors had determined her to be around 6 years old. Mum and Dad were so happy they got to bring her home. They kept saying our family was complete. It was like our little sister had literally been dropped off by a stork. Birdie was a wonderful sister. She loved to play outside and slept cuddled up with our pet cat, Pebbles, every night without fail. It was so cute. It took a little while for us to notice something was extra special about her. She came to us in the summer, and that whole summer our garden flourished. The house was alive with family and the garden responded with beautiful colors and scents. Butterflies frequented and bees collected pollen. Birdie loved it all. She would spend hours watching them smiling. She of course loved the bird song. Sometimes she would wake up at 5 a.m. just to sit outside as they chirped. One day towards the end of summer, Pebbles was hit by a car. The person who hit him brought him to us crying. It was an accident, but he was dead. His legs were broken, and his fur was soaked with blood. Me and Violet were devastated. Our parents tried to comfort us, but it was Birdie we were all worried about. That cat had been the thing to make her feel at home, her little buddy. This poor, damaged girl just clung on to his lifeless body, refusing to let anyone take him from her as Dad prepared a tiny grave in the garden. After about 20 minutes of somber digging, we prepared to bury our beloved pet. I turned to Birdie and watched as she breathed heavily into her dead friend's fur, then watched as Pebbles took a breath in perfect unison. "Mummy, Pebbles is okay now. We don't need to bury him," Birdie said, tugging on my mum's cardigan. My whole family were in shock. Not only was the cat now breathing, but he was also completely healed. The injuries from the car were non-existent. If anything, he seemed younger and more sprightly than he was before the accident. We asked how she did it, but she couldn't explain. She just said that he wasn't supposed to die. She hated cars after that. She said they hurt things and ruined the air. She was eerily wise for her young age. It often made me wonder if the doctors had got her age wrong, but in every other way she was a child. We watched over the next few months as bunches of flowers lasted months longer than usual and the garden grew and thrived at an unbelievable rate. We knew it was her. Whenever she sat outside, the birds would surround her, butterflies would litter the sky. Peter hated Birdie, especially after the incident with the cat. I think he was jealous that she was special and he wasn't, that she got more attention than him. He was too old to be cruel in the same ways that he had been to me and Violet growing up. It would have got him in trouble. So he found other ways to upset Birdie, like ruining her paintings with an accidentally on purpose spilled cup of tea, or calling her a freak, weirdo, and baby. He even once ripped the leg off the first teddy bear that Mum and Dad got her and claimed it was an accident. He took it too far one day, and that's when we discovered that her powers could go the other way too. Birdie had found 2 large stick insects living in the garden and had brought them inside for a few days to study them for a science project at school. Stick insects aren't even native to the UK, but it wasn't a surprise that she found them. We often found her holding exotic bugs or with a small exotic bird on her shoulder. She loved them stick insects. She named them Stick and Larry, like a typical creative kid. Peter decided that after a long day of being a full-blown twat, it would be the cherry on top for him to pick up Larry as she was releasing them and snap him right in front of Birdie, pretending that he thought it was a real stick. Birdie was devastated. She cried and sat with one half of Larry for hours, but when he had done it, Peter had thrown half across the garden and she hadn't been able to find it. I tried to help her, but she was inconsolable. "I can't fix him if I don't have him all. But he wasn't supposed to die. I hate Peter." She could barely get the words out between sobs. I told her that I did too, and hugged her, but nothing would cheer her up. Birdie had more than just empathy for nature. She considered it all family, every leaf, bug, bird, and more. That night I listened as she cried herself to sleep. It was heartbreaking. About an hour after she fell asleep, I heard her get up for the toilet, sobbing hard as she passed Peter's room. The sight of his door must have reminded her. And then I heard a different noise, a buzzing. It was loud and all concentrated around Peter's room. He started to scream, and there was a lot of banging. I opened my door and watched as my parents launched themselves out of their room and ran towards his door. Violet was stood by her door looking terrified, and Birdie was alone, quietly watching Peter's door, smiling an unfriendly smile. I will never forget the sight of my brother literally covered in a suit of angry wasps, stinging every inch of his skin, more pouring in through an open window and none coming towards any of us, all of them flocking to him. My parents tried desperately to get them off him, but their efforts were futile. After about 10 minutes the attack was over. The wasps left in perfect unison and my brother's corpse dropped to the floor with a heavy clunk. He was swollen, unrecognizable, and had a look of sheer terror on his face, a look I had never seen from him. Birdie was disturbingly unbothered. She watched the wasps as they left with a look of gratitude. My parents begged her to save him like Pebbles, but she said bluntly that he was too big. "I won't pretend I miss my brother. He never treated me like family and was always cruel. But I didn't want him to die like that. I didn't want to watch my parents' hearts break. There weren't any more negative incidents with Birdie's power for a long time. She never confessed responsibility for Peter's death, but we all knew it was her. The wasps had turned out to be Asian giant hornets, not found in the UK. My dad put it down to a child's rage and a lack of understanding of consequences. My mum was not so forgiving. She interacted with her youngest daughter as little as possible for the next 3 years. She was a cold and uncaring mother, replacing the woman who had fought desperately for this little girl. She was scared of her. The next incident occurred when Birdie was 9. She had learned by this point that other people couldn't do what she did, and he had to hide it at least a little. We still had the best garden in the city, but she learned playing with lemurs in the garden was best left for late at night when no one was around. It worried me that she had such control at such a young age. A boy at school had been teasing her, calling her a freak because he caught her whispering to a tree. The same boy was suddenly bitten by a brown recluse spider, sparking panic in the local area that these American venomous spiders were on the loose. He spent 3 months in hospital with an infected ulcer the size of a tennis ball before his little body gave up. Birdie was truly dangerous. Things only got worse from there. As she grew up, she became more aware of the world and its evils. She's particularly bothered by environmental issues and gets incredibly angry very easily. As she got bigger, the animals and the threats became bigger. By time she reached 11, she was causing cases of scorpion, feral cat, fox and even poisonous plant injuries over schoolboys peeing in flower beds and teachers demonstrating dissection. Our family was scared to accidentally step on a dandelion. She summoned some of the strangest and most fantastical creatures I've ever seen. On holiday we were swimming in the sea when she witnessed a man drop his beer can in the ocean. He was quickly surrounded by hundreds of box jellyfish, carefully avoiding all other people in their path to attack this man. He died in excruciating pain in the ocean, while my little sister just smiled. She's 13 now and has become a full-blown teenager. Tantrums and drama about everything. All teenagers do it. But Birdie is truly frightening. Where you used to find her surrounded by butterflies with an exotic bud on her shoulder, she's now more likely to be whispering through a gap in her window to a vulture with a venomous tarantula on her shoulder. It's like Mother Nature, the puberty years. You have to watch your every step. Every plant could kill you. An animal might come at you from around a corner. Or you might have to watch your 13-year-old sister kill a person knowing you can never prove it was her. I didn't know what to do. I was terrified. Me and Violet are still really close, despite her having left for uni. I went straight into work and stayed at home, and we talk all the time. When she comes home she sees what I mean. Minor incidents happen almost every other day and major ones around once a month. It's getting out of control, so we made a plan. This weekend we've suggested a family camping trip to our parents in the place we found Birdie. She's always asked to go back and see it, but they said no because of the circumstances. After everything that's happened, they're desperate for something that might slow down Birdie's incidents, so they agreed pretty quickly to take us all back. They think that if she sees what she has compared to the nothingness she came from, that she'll relax and stop these teenage tantrums. Me and Violet tried to feel how our parents do about it. We really did. But we don't believe she can change. She's killed 9 people and she's only 13. So this weekend we are going to kill her and bury her under the tree Violet found her under, almost like we are planting her so she can go back to nature. We love our sister, but we can't let any more people die. The largest thing I've seen her summon is a hyena, and she's still growing. We can't risk her being alive. We just can't. We might not succeed. We might get attacked by killer monsters and die. But we have to try. Wish us luck.